Hi. I want to work with all of you guys to solve the world's problems. We need to do so as a warm-up exercise. The practice is going to come in handy when it's time for the hard part. So, 100 years ago, most scientists were vitalists. Formal logic was just a glimmer in the eye of a few visionaries like Russell and Whitehead, and Gödel was decades away. 50 years ago, DNA had just been, the double helical structure had just been discovered. People were beginning to work out the genetic code, and the first transistor computer was shipping. One way or another, if the 21st century sees technological progress comparable to the 20th century, more powerful minds than our own are going to be within reach. This constitutes a critical transition in the history of life. We aren't trying to time it down to a year, or even a decade, because that doesn't seem like the sort of thing someone could know yet. We do think that we can know this, that the development of human-level intelligence was the most important event of the last million years. Out of our chimpanzee times 4 brains come all of the art, science, philosophy, and joy that you know and see in your lives. The development of a greater than human intelligence seems likely to be a really, really big deal in precisely the same way. And it's a critical point in history, because if we screw up this one thing, it won't matter what we get right. And if we do this one thing right, it looks like we can fix almost anything else that we've gotten wrong. We think this is a very high variance point in intelligence life's development. It's the point when our species hands it on to the next generation of mind. Whether we do it by augmenting a human or by building an artificial intelligence, the point can depend very critically on exactly how it's approached. The right design, it's very clearly possible to build a mind that would eliminate everything that we value in the universe. It's also very clearly possible to build a mind that would discover what we value and bring it to fruition that we can literally not imagine. Our brains could not represent it. You know, the connections aren't there. Anyway, so that's the hard part. The question is, what can we do about an issue like this today? What's the warm-up? Well, it turns out that a lot of the expertise you need for thinking about artificial intelligence translates into expert thinking on human rationality, and from there to thinking about how science works. Of all of humanity's accomplishments to date, the scientific method is unique in the depth, breadth, and speed with which it has elevated the human condition. Artificial intelligence is simply the scientific method, specified precisely enough that it can be implemented by a computer. As we progress towards such a theory, we can reliably recognize science's signature, and more importantly, its absence. In disciplines where science is not yet taking place, it's likely that science will yield extremely low-hanging fruit, frequently, and with huge payoffs. For example, think of nutrition. It's extremely difficult to figure out even what the expert consensus is. Worse, the consensus changes radically every few decades. Even regarding the fundamentals, this is true. A few decades ago, butter was considered worse for you than high trans fat margarine, and the food pyramid was the closest thing there was to an official, well-endorsed general nutritional recommendation set. As a result of this sort of situation, many of you have spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what nutritional facts to believe. In other words, you're doing the job of a scientist yourself, as an amateur, just for the benefits to one person and possibly a few friends who you can share your thoughts with. By contrast, once you know the expert consensus in physics, you're done. You don't wonder about whether you should believe it. Furthermore, if you want to figure out whether a physicist's claim is the expert consensus, you can just ask him, and he'll reliably tell you. From Pasteur to Crick, a large fraction of biology's most important discoveries, especially foundational discoveries, have come from physicists. Once AI theory tells you what to look for, it's easy to identify scientists, in physics and elsewhere, who think in the manner needed to initiate scientific research programs in fields where currently only the surface features of science are present. Over the next few years, the Singularity Institute will identify and hire scientists who reliably follow such norms and who also have good research track programs. More senior scientists can be hired for summer sessions, more junior ones frequently full-time. A dozen of each sounds like it would be plenty to lay foundations for a real science of nutrition. That's more than it took to lay the foundations of physics. And really, although physics may be fundamentally simpler than nutrition, we're not asking to outrun the bear. We're just asking to outrun the work of amateur scientists in their spare time just to benefit themselves. It's certain that science better than that could be laid with less work than it took to bring about physics. Anyway, it doesn't mean that we'll be able to predict everything. Music theory, meteorology, these theories clearly cannot predict everything, but they can predict way better than any non-expert could. Then the warm-up for fixing the world is to bring physics-style thinking to the questions you're already working on as an amateur. Health, wealth, love, power, healing the world. It's a good bet that any scientific consensus worthy of the name would help. I think you guys are great. I think you're gonna fix the world. With reliable information, fixing the world will be easy. Before that and after that, talk to me about the hard part.